Chronicles of Narnia, The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis, Chapter 9, The Great Meeting on Stable Hill. For a long time they could not speak, nor even shed a tear. Then the unicorn stamped on the ground with his hoof, and shook his mane, and spoke. "Sire," he said, "there is no need of counsel. We see that the ape's plans are laid deeper than we dreamed of. Doubtless he is going to belong in secret traffic with the Disrock, and as soon as he had found the lion's skin, he went on word to make ready his navy to take the Cherry Paravel and all Narnia. Nothing now remains for us seven but to go back to Stable Hill, proclaim the truth, and take the adventure that Aslan sends us. And if by great marvel we defeat those 30 Calormenes who are with the ape, then return again and die in battle with a far greater host of them who will soon march from Cherry Paravel." Trinian nodded, but he turned to the children and said, "Now, friends, it is time for you to go hence in your own world. Doubtless you have done all you were sent to do." But we've done nothing," said Jill, who was shivering, not with fear exactly, but because everything was so horrible. "Nay," said the king, "you loosed me from tree. You glided before me like a snake last night in the wood, and took puzzle. And you, Eustace, killed your man. But you are too young to share such a bloody end as we or the others might meet tonight, or it may be 3 days hence. I entreat you, nay, I command you, return to your own place. I should be put to shame if I let such young warriors fall in battle on my side." "No, no, no," said Jill, very white when she began speaking, then suddenly very red and white again. "We won't. I don't care what you say. We're going to stick with you whatever happens, aren't we, Eustace?" "Yes, but there's no need to get so worked up about it," said Eustace, who stuck his hands in the pockets, forgetting how very odd that looks when you're wearing a mail shirt. "Because, you see, we haven't any choice. What's the good of talking about going back? How? We've got no magic for doing it." This was very good sense, but at the moment Jill hated Eustace for saying it. He was fond of being dreadfully matter-of-fact when other people got excited. When Trini realized that the two strangers could not get home unless Aslan suddenly whisked them away, he next wanted them to go across to the southern mountains into Archenland where they might possibly be safe, but they didn't know their way and there was no one to send them with. Also, as Poggin said, once the Calormenes went to Narnia, they would certainly take Archenland the next week or so. The Disrock always wanted to have these northern countries for his own. In the end, Eustace and Jill begged so hard for Trinian that they said they could come with him and take their chance, or, as he much more sensibly called it, the adventure that Aslan would send them. The king's first idea was that they should go back to Stable Hill. They were sick of the very name by it now, till after dark. The dwarf told them that if they arrived there by daylight, they would probably find the place deserted, except perhaps for a Calormene sentry. The beasts were far too frightened by what the ape and Ginger had told them about this new angry Aslan, or Tashlan, to go near it except when they were called together for those horrible midnight meetings. And the Calormenes were never good woodsmen. Poggin thought that even by daylight they could easily get around somewhere behind the stable without being seen. This would be much harder to do when the light had gone and the ape might be calling the beasts together and the Calormenes were on duty. And when the meeting did begin, they would leave Puzzle at the back of the stable, completely out of sight, till the moment which they wanted to produce him. This is obviously a good thing, for their only chance was to give Narnians a sudden surprise. Everyone agreed that the whole party set off on a new line, northwest, towards the hated hill. The eagle sometimes flew to and fro above them, sometimes he sat perched on Puzzle's back. No one, not even the king himself, in some great need, would dream of riding on a unicorn. This time Jill and Eustace walked together. They had been feeling very brave when they were begging to be allowed to come with the others, but now they didn't feel brave at all. "Paul," said Eustace in a whisper, "I may as well tell you I've got the wind up." "Oh, you're all right, Scrub," said Jill. "You can fight. But I'm just shaking, if you want to know the truth." "Oh, shaking's nothing," said Eustace. "I'm feeling I'm going to be sick." "Don't talk about that, for goodness sake," said Jill. They went on in silence for a minute or two. "Paul," said Eustace presently. "What?" said she. "What'll happen if we get killed here?" "We'll be dead, I suppose." "But I mean, what will happen in our own world? Shall we wake up and find ourselves back in that train? Or shall we just vanish and never be heard of any more? Or shall we be dead in England? Gosh, I never thought of that. It'll be a rum for Pete and the others if they saw me waving out of the window and then the train comes and we're nowhere to be found. Or if they found too, I mean, if we're dead over there in England." "Ugh!" said Jill. "What a horrible idea!" "It wouldn't be hard for us," said Eustace. "We shouldn't be there." "I almost wish—" "No, I don't, though," said Jill. "What were you going to say?" "I was going to say I wish we never come. But I don't. Even if we are killed, I'd rather be fighting for Narnia than grow old and stupid at some home, perhaps go about a bath chin and die in the end just the same. Or be smashed up by British railways. Why'd you say that? Then that awful jerk came. The one seemed to throw us into Narnia. I thought it was the beginning of the railway accident, so I was jolly glad to find myself here instead. While Jill and Eustace were talking about this, the others were discussing their plans and becoming less miserable. This because they were now thinking of what was to be done this very night and thought of what had happened to Narnia. The thought that all her glories and joys was over was pushed way back into the part of their minds. The moment they stopped talking, it would come out and make them wretched again, but they kept on talking. Poggin was quite cheerful about the night's work they had to do. He was sure that the bar and the bear, probably all the dogs, would come over to their side at once, and he wouldn't believe that all the dwarfs could stick to Griffel, and fighting by firelight in and out among trees would be the advantage to the weaker side. And then, if they could win tonight, need they really show their lives by meeting the main Calormene army a few days later? Why not hide in the woods, or even up in the western waste beyond the great waterfall, live like outlaws? And then they might gradually get stronger and stronger, for Talking Beasts and Archenlanders will be joining them every day. And at last they come out of hiding and sweep the Calormenes, who they've got careless by then, out of the country, and Narnia would be revived. After all, something like that had happened in the time of King Miraz, and Trinian heard all this and thought, what about Tush? And felt in his bones none of it was going to be happen, but he didn't say so. When they got nearer the stable hill, of course, everyone became quiet. The real woodwork began. From the moment at which they first saw the hill to the moment which they all arrived back at the stable, it took them over 2 hours. It's the sort of thing one couldn't properly describe unless one wrote pages and pages about it. The journey from each bit of cover to the next was a separate adventure, and there were very long waits in between, and several false alarms. If you are a good scout or good guide, you will know already what it must have been like. By about sunset they were all safe in a clump of holly trees about 15 yards behind the stable. They all munched some biscuit and lay down. When they came to the worst part, the waiting. Luckily for the children, they slept for a couple of hours. Of course they woke up when the night grew cold, and what was worse, they woke up thirsty with no chance of getting a drink. Puzzled just stood, shivering a little with nervousness, and said nothing. But Trinian, with his head against Jill's flank, slept soundly as if he were in his roll-bedded chair parable, till the sound of a gong beating awoke him, and he sat up. There was firelight on the far side of the stable, and he knew the hour had come. Kiss me, Jewel, he said, for certainly this hour is our last night on earth, and if I ever offended you against any matter, great or small, forgive me now. Dear King, said the unicorn, I could almost wish you had, so that I might forgive it. Farewell. We have known great joys together. If Aslan gave me a choice, I would choose no other life than the life I had, no other death than the one we got to. Then they woke up Farsight, who was asleep with his head under his wing, and it made him look as if he had no head at all, and crept toward the stable. They left Puzzle, not without a kind word, for no one was angry with him now, just behind it, telling him not to move until someone came to fetch him, and took up their position at one end of the stable. The bonfire had not been lit for long, and was just beginning to blaze up. It was only a few feet away from them, and the great crowd of Narnian creatures were on the other side of it, so the Trinian could not see at first them very well, though of course he saw dozens of eyes shining with the reflection of the fire, as you've seen a rabbit or cat in the headlight of a car. And just as Trinian took his place, the gong stopped beating, and from somewhere on his left 3 figures appeared. One was Rishta Tarkhan and the Calormene captain. The second was the ape. He was holding on the Tarkar's hand with one paw and kept holding on to and kept whimpering and muttering. Not so fast, don't go so fast. I'm not at all well. My poor head. These midnight meetings are getting too much for me. Apes aren't meant to be up at night. It's not as if I was a rat or a bat. Oh, my poor head. On the other side of the ape, walking very soft and stately, with his tail slight up in the air, came Ginger the cat. They were heading for the bonfire, and were so close to Trinian that they would have seen him at once if they had looked in the right direction. Fortunately, they did not, but Trinian heard Rishta say to Ginger in a low voice, Now, cat, to thy post. See thou play thy part well. Meow, meow, count on me, said the Ginger. Then he stepped away beyond the bonfire and sat down in front of a row of assembled beasts, in the audience, as you might say. For really, as it happened, the whole thing was rather like a theatre. The crowd of Narnians were like the people in the seats. The little grassy place in front of the stable where the bonfire burned and the ape the captain had stood to talk to the crowd was like a stage. The stable itself was like a scenery at the back of the stage, and Trudy and his friends were like the people peering around from behind the scenery. It was a splendid position. If any of them had stepped forward into the dull firelight, all eyes would be fixed on him at once. On the other hand, so long as they stood still in the shadow of the end wall of the stable, it was 100 to 1 against their being noticed. Radishta Tarkan dragged the ape up close to the fire. The pair of them turned to face the crowd, and this of course meant their backs were towards Trinian and his friends. "Now, monkey," said Rishta Tarkan in a low voice, "say the words that wiser heads have put into my mouth, and hold up to my head." As he spoke, he gave the ape a little prod or kick from behind with the point of his shoe. "Do leave me alone," muttered Shift, but he sat up in the straighter and began, in a louder voice. "Now listen, all of you. A terrible thing has happened, a wicked thing, the wickedest thing that has ever has done in Narnia. And Aslan—" "Taslan, fool!" whispered Rishta Tarkan. "Taslan, I mean, of course," said the ape, "is very angry about it." There was terrible silence while the beast waited to hear what the trouble was in store for them. The little party by the end wall of the stable also held their breath. What on earth was coming now? "Yes," said the ape, "at this very moment, the terrible one himself is among us, and here in the stable just behind me, one wicked beast has chosen what you'd think no one would dare to do even if he was 1,000 miles away. It has dressed himself up in a lion's skin, wandering about these very woods pretending to be Aslan." Joel wondered for a moment if the ape had gone mad. Was he going to tell the whole truth? A roar of horror and rage went up from the beast. "Grrr!" came the growls. "Who is he? Where is he? Just let me get my teeth into him." "It was seen last night," screamed the ape. "But it got away. A donkey, a common miserable ass. If any of you see that ass—" "Grrr!" growled the beast. We will. He'd better keep out of our way." Jill looked at the king. His mouth was wide open and his face was full of horror, and she understood the devilish cunning of the enemy's plan. By mixing a little truth, they had made their lie far stronger. It was the good now. Telling the beast that an ass had been dressed up as a lion to deceive them, the ape would only say, "That's just what I've said." And it was the good of showing them Puzzle in his lion's skin. They would only tear him in pieces. "That's taken the wind out of our sails," whispered Eustace. "The ground is taken from under our feet," said Trinian. Cursed cleverness," said Poggin. "That'll be the sword that slew his life, the lie of Ginger's making."